We will go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today for another installment in our series, Building Trustee Excellence. This is LCAP training. And if you haven't already had the chance, if you would please put your name, county, and your role in the chat to introduce yourself. We're going to be very judicious with our hour today. So we have the most time for our speakers to talk about the LCAP today. My name is Debbie Moss. I'm the CEO for ACCBE. We also have our complete leadership team here today. Our president, Bina Lefkowitz. We have Yvonne Chan, who is our treasurer. And then we have David Patterson, who's with the Placer County COE, who has made the connection for us to have our speakers present today, the Placer County Office of Education staff. So I'll get to those introductions in a minute. So our agenda today, we'll give the lion's share of the time to Leslie and Jennifer for the presentation. We'll also have time for Q&A, and also feel free to put your Q&A in the chat because we can also use that later in case we run out of time to follow up on additional questions. Want to announce, if you hadn't seen it already, ACCBE is now 45 members strong. We're a little over a year old now, and we want to thank all of the counties that have joined ACCBE. And by way of reminder, our mission is to empower county board members so they can advocate for all the students. And then our vision as the leading voice for the county boards of education is to improve outcomes, not only for those students, but the families and the communities that they're in. We have four goals which serve to drive our work. And I want to focus today on engaging, elevate, and empowering. So these online education series are part of helping us build leadership capacity for county boards, and then also give you an opportunity to collaborate with one another and have peer-to-peer support. So with that, I want to introduce both Jennifer Hicks, who is the Associate Superintendent of Educational Services at Placer County COE. And these slides will be made available on the website when this is over. So we've included a short bio here. I won't take the time now to read it so we can have time for their presentation. And then also Leslie Rishton, who is the Director of Continuous Improvement and Support, is with us today. So with that, I am going to take my slides down and turn it over to Leslie. So thank you, Leslie.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being with us.
All right. Like Deborah said, my name is Leslie Riston, Director of Continuous Improvement. I'm getting feedback a little bit. One of the major parts of continuous improvement is the local control accountability plan. So if you can just drop in the chat right away, like what is your experience with the LCAP? Are you very familiar, or somewhat familiar, or I've heard about it, but I don't know very much, or I am brand new? Just a 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you want to stick that in the chat, we'll kind of see where people are. Seem very, very familiar, pretty familiar. Great. Oh, okay, Louise very much knows. Well, and hopefully at this time, we're going to walk through some of the things maybe that are newer this year, and then also going through the lens of just this is the board role. So kind of taking it from that vantage point of where you are at the board level. So the right here, just clarifying the purpose is the goals for this next session is going to be clarifying the purpose and some of the common misconceptions about LCAP, and then also define and reinforce your governance and oversight role, breaking down those components in clear, accessible terms, and then also wanted to give you some practical questions and strategies for your interaction with those of the folks that are carrying out the programs and actions in the LCAP. One of the things that kind of bogs down education is the acronyms, and so I put the acronyms at the back of uh, the list, but I'm also they're in there. I'm going to give them to you right up here up front as well, because I want you to make sure that as I'm talking, if you're like, I don't really remember what that was that she said, it's right there for you as well. So the LCAP is a 3-year strategic plan that's updated annually. It's the blueprint for improving student outcomes. And then it connects your goals, your actions, your services, and your funding together. It's for resource alignment, ensuring that for student needs, and it is a public document that promotes transparency and accountability. LCAPs are posted on every district's website in an easy manner. They're placed on the county website, and they're actually now on the dashboard as well for every district. It really answers those questions. How are we using our resources to improve our outcomes for students? The LCAP is drafted off LCFF, which is local control funding formula for, there's 3 pots of money for that. There's the base grants. Every student generates base grant funding for teacher salaries, materials, things like that. And then every student who is low income, learning English, or in foster care generates 20% more. We call those the supplemental funds. And then on top of that, if there's a district with at least 55% of high need students, they generate concentration funds. So there's additional funding on top of that. And those separate layers require different types of guidance for using the funds. A lot of times people think that the LCAP is just compliance. I love thinking of the LCAP as the district story. It's the story of what's happening in this LEA or this district or charter. It's not a budget document, and it's not a list of every single thing that they do. Sometimes it feels like it, but there's still a whole bunch of other things happening in the district as well. We're not going to see brand new initiative every year after year. It's a 3-year document. And then also sometimes people think it's just about that money for the low income, the English learners, and the foster youth. It's not only about those supplemental funds. It's also all of the priorities for the state. As a board member, it's really your tool for oversight and accountability and a way to monitor the progress. And it's your way of asking, like, are our actions aligned to our priorities? So you have your governance priorities and the resources. Are those actual resources producing results? So the actions and the metrics are all linked together. And then the student groups, are they being served effectively? The board focuses on the 3 things of outcomes and impact and alignment to their goals. As a board member, you set that direction and the priorities for folks, and then that is to ensure the alignment across the mission and the student outcomes. So really looking at, are we meeting those metrics and those goals? Are the actions leading to that? And are they effective? You approve the county office LCAP and the annual updates, and you monitor that progress toward the stated goals. And then you also are ensuring that the work has been transparent and there's lots of public engagement along the way. You're very lucky, you don't have to write the LCAP or design the programs that are in there. The board does not design programs or manage the actual implementation of that. And then as a county board, you do not approve the other LEA's LCAPs. So you're not approving the other district LCAPs in the county, just the county office. And then your charter. The LCAP oversight does happen all year. A lot of times people think like, oh, it just comes at the end for approval. But the folks I work with, all of the folks that are working on their LCAPs throughout the year, they work all year and they're bringing you that information in different places. So when you want to think about providing input into an LCAP, it happens when they're bringing you your fall and winter student performance reports. It happens when they're coming to you with their dashboard indicator updates. It's happening during that mid-year. That has to be happening by February 28th. So boards should have all seen their mid-year LCAP update. You're not approving that, but you are able to see and be updated on every metric and action year to date. when you're getting your fiscal and your budget updates, as well as the spring review of the draft. That's your opportunity for board input before the adoption, and then that LCAP adoption and approval. It really is the through line for seeing the students, looking at the greatest needs, identifying any performance gaps, getting all of the stakeholder and educational partner input, and then goals and actions are related to that in increasing and improving services. And we'll talk about all of those things in the next few minutes. So thinking about that in the chat, like one word, what should the LCAP help a district do well? Just kind of thinking about that broad oversight. Some time to think. Oh, I didn't put those are the acronyms. I hadn't put them in the chat. Track. That's a good one. Outcomes, values, shared values, engage. Accountability. Right there in the name. Nice. All right. Thank you. Ooh, guidance. Like I said, that the LCAP is a 3-year plan. And so 26, 27, the one that folks are writing and working on right now, this is year 3 of the LCAP. And next year, it will be a whole new LCAP after that they'll be working on. So this is, you're going to see a lot of, do the things that we planned for our 3-year strategic plan really work? There we go. The LCAP, I added in here the links directly to the CDE LCAP page. If you want to look at the actual adopted template and action tables and budget overview, they're right there. The budget overview for parents is more of the way that the parents can see where the funding is going in an easier digestible format. And then the LCAP is all of the different pieces and the instructions. It is a lengthy template. And then also the action tables are where the money is going and what is being funded. And that is alongside the budget overview. Then you have your plan summary, educational partners, goals and action, increase and improve services, and action tables. Those are all the sections. When someone's talking about LCAP, they are talking about all of those things. And we're going to just dive into each of them, give you a broad overview of each of those sections as I go through it.
Leslie, you've got a question in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Take a quick, or I can read it for you.
Is the COE LCAP only focused on the students we serve directly? Yes. In fact, there's usually there will be those students and the community schools and special ed kids. Yes, that is the LCAP that is written for your schools, not the other schools that are in the county. So it's just for those schools that you listed. So yes.
And so the only thing I would add is if a county also has a dependent charter, they would also be there.
Yes. So, and then there would be 2 separate ones. So we have 2, like here in Placer, we have a dependent charter. They write their LCAP, and then we have the Carton Community Schools side, and they write that charter, or that LCAP, sorry. Great question. This is what it looks like when somebody gets just the template and they have to fill all of those words in. It looks like general information and it's very small, but really there's a lot of good information that goes into all of these sections. So in the plan summary, so then there's this overview plan summary. These are the things that go under that. There's the general information where if you just started reading, you'd learn about, is this a rural district? Well, who are the students and the types of students they serve? What kinds of schools there are? And then what are they all about? And then it goes into the annual performance, and that's a review of the state indicators and the local performance indicators. So the California dashboard and then anything else. Especially if you're thinking about charters, they use things like NWEA MAP scores, or they might be, or a school district might be using iReady. They can include all of that data in there as well, as all of the indicators that are on the dashboard, such as chronic absenteeism, graduation rates. They address all of those things in that first section. And then there's a section that's called technical assistance. If a district or an LEA is in differentiated assistance level 2, then they're going to address that in that section. If you are looking through your counties and they're not, that section should say not applicable. It wouldn't be exactly blank, but it would not be filled out. And the same thing with the CSI. CSI is comprehensive school improvement prompts, and that's for a school within that LEA. If they have any identified, they're going to complete that section. In the annual performance, there is some minimum requirements in there, and then what they had to add every year, starting in the 23 dashboard, so the 24 LCAP, you had to, any school that received the lowest performance level on any of the indicators, they had to put that in there for 3 years so that you really, like I said, this was a 3-year document. So when they put that in for the first year, they kind of are looking to see where are we after 3 years. And so that every year those float up and they're in that annual performance section as well. Additionally, we have been getting learning recovery emergency block grant funds. And so with those funds, they have to address it in there. What was the needs assessment and then the goal and the action that they use those funds in. And they don't have to be brand new, but they have to talk about those funds. So those are 2 areas. They have to talk about the lowest ones from 2023 dashboard and the LREBG money in the plan summary. And then, like I said, with the CSI, if one of your schools, and a lot of times you'll see this even at the county office, that you have a school that's in CSI, then they're going to list the school and describe how that district has supported the school with their plan, and then how the district is monitoring. Not just how the school is doing that, but how your district is monitoring that. At the end of each section, I just kind of put a couple reflection questions for yourselves that you can think about when you're looking through your LCAP or you're skimming it or you're listening to a presentation. Does this really explain who we serve? Is it really in the needs of our students? And then do the priorities here align with what our goals as a board are? And then would a community member understand our challenges and our focus areas after reading this? So that's just kind of something that you can keep in your mind for a reflection piece. Engaging educational partners is the new term. It's been a term for a while, and they did change it after in this template over the last 3 years. It changed a little. It used to have 3 prompts, and now there's only 2. They really want to know, how was the process for the partners? And then how was the LCAP influenced by that feedback? So one of the things I talk to my writers about all the time is, I understand that you have this and you got all of this engagement, but I want to know, in goal 2 section, goal 2.3 was influenced by our parent feedback specifically, or our DLAC, or who it was, so that we know that your educational partners are also driving this work. It's not just like we showed it to them one day. It's really about that 2-way communication. And then I wanted to make sure that we do, and I know I had one thing in there, I missed it, that it was an older graphic that said stakeholders. They are using the term educational partners as a replacement for stakeholders. So educational partners, when we're speaking about going out and getting, stakeholder engagement, we do say educational partners. So that's just one of the things. That last bullet is who everyone needs to communicate with. So school districts and county offices include teachers, principals, other administrators, other school personnel, the local bargaining units, parents, and then students. So they're collecting information different ways with all of those partners. So when you're looking at these educational partners, you're looking for something like that. Do we make sure we talk to? Where are the students in here? Legally, there's a couple other big ones. So you have those educational partners, and then you're looking for those recommendations. And the board needs to go in there. The board is the approval. and soliciting recommendations and comments for all of those folks, and then providing opportunity to submit written comments regarding specific actions and expenditures, and then present the LCAP to your parent advisory committee. So there's a parent advisory committee so if you have 50 or more ELs and a 15% percentage of students, then you do need to have an English learner parent advisory committee to review and comment on that. And then the district and the COE superintendents must respond in writing to comments received from these committees. So those two committees right there, the LCAP PAC and the English Learner Parent Advisory Committee, they both need to have their comments received in and responded to in writing. So the question is, can you explain how the board can have early input as well as part of the final input? And so the board is providing input when they, throughout all of those other pieces that I explained, like when you're providing input on like state test scores, the dashboard, all that, you're providing input at those times, but then also there's that spring review that your districts are bringing or your counties are bringing that LCAP to you at the review piece as well. And then there's also the public hearing, which needs to be held. I have that in the timeline later on, where that is typically during a board meeting in front of the board as well. I'm hoping that answered your question. And then after the hearing, then you do have the right to not approve parts of it. And then also, if it doesn't get approved, all of it by your county office, then it does come back to you for a reapproval later on. Did that answer your question? All right, I think I'll keep going then.
Yep.
Okay, good. So I did mention all of these groups. The one that I haven't mentioned yet, and it is part of law, it's consultation. The consultation is also with the last one, the Special Education Local Plan Area, or SELPA. So the SELPA folks are meeting with your LCAP writers, your LCAP team, to really look at it through the lens and provide input and consultation for students with disabilities specifically and how that works. But that's a nice checklist right there for you to think about when you're looking at the LCAP engagement. And so those are the two prompts I shared with you. How are you being consulted with, and how is that influencing your LCAP? So for you as a board to reflect on this section, you might want to think about, who did we hear from and who might still be missing? Just because you don't have to meet with some of those folks, you might want to be looking at, hey, we're doing something, there's a lot of actions involving this. Did we make sure we reached out to those people? Specifically that it is impacting, or are we getting the right people to our PAC? Things like that. Thinking about what are the themes that emerged. A lot of times I've seen a lot of different LCAPs, and some of them are really good and they explain all of the themes they saw, the trends they saw. Others don't, and so maybe you're looking through that as a board member to see what are the themes there, and are our actions and our measurements working that way. And then how did that feedback change the LCAP? That's where you're really seeing that this is not just something we're doing, it's something that we're building together. This is a question. Do any of our boards actually go to parent focus groups or talk to themselves, to students, to get feedback? Our COE just does parent and student surveys. That's a question for the group. Not sure. I'm also thinking about an educational partner group that you think is especially important to hear from when developing the LCAP. So that's something. Is there somebody you felt like you really want to hone into when you're looking through your LCAP, they're presenting the work that they're doing for you? Is there a group that you think is especially important to hear from when you're developing?
This is Yuan Tan from LACO. No, the board members do not do that kind of engagement or interaction. So, but the question to you is, should we? So
Mm.
that's one. Second is, I just try to put in the question in the chat. As you know that community court schools are usually all Title I schools. So how is that plan for Title I? They call it the SIPSA, whatever it is, need to be in alignment. Because all we heard from the community is during public comment, and unfortunately, usually, seems the needs are not met, allocation is not, really fair, etc.
So a lot of times there's the crossover of those folks to putting the LCAP alignment with the SIPSA and those are aligned as well. And then the title funds are the federal funds and the LCAP is all of our state funds and how that works. So those should be working in conjunction, right? An alignment and overlap that they're building on. They don't, Title I funds don't necessarily go in the LCAP. But the SIPSA and the LCAP should be aligned, and in single school districts, the LCAP can replace the SIPSA for that reason, because it's two different plans, but they're the same plan, really. They should be moving strategically forward for the outcomes of students. Don't
So
know.
are we supposed to, should, really be more engaging with the school site council or the community as long as we go together with our superintendent or staff?
So and again, I'm not sure how all counties operate. However, I believe like a lot of you go out and experience your districts or your counties. Like you'll go to graduations, you'll go visit schools, you'll sit on a committee maybe. That's how you're gaining your own input and from those folks. I would think that if there is a PAC meeting, you would be allowed to attend. You wouldn't get like a vote in it, maybe if you're not the on the member of the committee specifically. But if you're just a community member, you can be at any of these community events where they're doing their outreach and hear what people are saying as just a listener and getting a pulse on what people are saying and listening or talking to kids. So if you're out at an event, I think that's a great way to gather some input without really making it a formal experience for everyone. Because you're a board member, and so you carry a lot of weight when you visit anything at all, and people know it in the room. And so when you're just there saying, "Hey, tell me about what's a great thing about being here or there," that's a great way to get some really good of your own educational partner feedback. What aside from looking at all that survey data, asking to see the survey data, that's a great way. They give out all of our LEAs give out an LPAC survey, right? Or LCAP. Sorry, I do EL stuff too. So LCAP and LPAC overlap for me. So really getting that. Sarah says we have community engagement meetings where they ask for LPAC feedback and input from site councils at Contra Costa. That's perfect. Yes, the site council is a great way for folks to get site level data if you have more than one site, especially, and then pulling it together. The principals give that feedback. So yeah, if you're at a site visit and you're talking to a principal, like what are some of the things that you think about? That's a great way to get some really good input that you can store away when you're looking at your LCAP. I remember I was at a site and they said they needed this too, or something like that. Or I noticed this is missing because I have been out talking to people, or I read all the survey data and it said this. So it's a good way to keep you informed. Great questions.
Thank you.
Very thoughtful. Yes. Okay. Oops. I went backwards by accident. I moved my chat to where my arrow was. Put it back. Goals and actions. This is a big meat of the LCAP. It really looks like this in the beginning, where all the metrics are numbered. It's a great way to refer them. Metric number 12, metric whatever, and then that's a data point. And then this was what it was when they started, and then each year And then we know what the target is and how far away you were. We're going to start with goals though. There's goals, metric, actions, and my favorite, goal analysis. Did it really work? So the goals are always focused on improving outcomes for students and aligned to the state priorities. It's the 3-year cycle, like I said, so those aren't really going to change. So hopefully they're aligned with what your priorities already are. And if not, next year they're rewriting that whole thing. So that's a good way to start to think about if they were off a little, how do you kind of realign things? But they typically roll around academics, school culture, which is like safety and climate. And then sometimes they're a social emotional side, and other times they put those two together. So there's an action number 2 as well, and a title. So when we talk about goals, we'll talk about goal 2, action 1, and then what it is and how much money is going to it. I'm going to talk about contributing is yes, if it's an increase in improved service that I'm going to talk about later. And then no, if it's just regular general funds, that base grant that I talked about at the beginning. What I wanted to do is give you a couple examples. So this is from one of our school districts, that they have action 1, like goal 1 and action 1 and action 5 would be their academic and support and continuous improvement in math. And these are the actual things they're doing. So now that's another place where you can generate like, oh, tell me about that or this if you wanted to know more about something. So they're focusing on strong implementation of basic maths and then the interventions for math. And then here's what they're doing around math. They're scaling up some fact fluency and building thinking classrooms. So when I look at that action, I'm thinking that's tied to a metric around math scores. I'm going to be looking at either iReady math scores, NWEA, or CAS math scores. Those are the things I'm going to be looking for to see if this is working or not. They're not going to list everything. It's already too long. This document is too long. It's a great time for you to actually ask questions about if you wanted to know more information about these things. But they're not going to put them in the LCAP, every single thing that they're doing, because those people are training everybody. They're doing walkthroughs. They're doing all of those things, but they're not going to put that all in the LCAP. And in the goal analysis, they're going to tell you, here's what happened in those math scores. Here's why that happened the way it was, and then also the money that was spent. And then the last part of this section is the analysis. There's 4 prompts, and they really go in the aspect of did we implement it the way we thought we were? Right now, there's a lot of issues with getting substitute teachers. There's a lot of issues with being able to have the time and the resources to do the amount of professional learning. Maybe they didn't hire a TOSA that was going to come and do a teacher on special assignment that was going to come and help coach teachers. So that's where they'll say, we didn't get to spend all this money because we didn't get to hire the person we wanted. So the first one is we could or couldn't implement them. The second was, do we spend all the money that we said we were going to? Those two are tied together because if you did, but you might have spent more. And then an explanation of how effective they were toward the goal. Remember, the goal is, are we going to improve an outcome? I'm going to use the math one again. Did our math scores end up going up? Then that would help me. That would show me. So I would look for data here. Look for, okay, the math scores went up, so we're finding these effective. Or the math scores don't look like they went up, but they definitely went up for students with disabilities, and that's what we were really focusing on here. Or they were focused on English learners, and the LP score went up. So things like that. And then any changes they're going to make, because again, this is a document that you can just change back and forth. Like it's based off of what are the specific needs and the funds.
Leslie?
Yes.
I popped something in the chat, and it's a question about many of the goals are inputs. We're going to do this type of PD. We're going to do that, but then others are about outcome goals. Could you talk about how they interact and why we, as a board, might see both?
Oh yeah. So the goal, the overarching goal is going to be, and I'm gonna, oops. So the goal is usually, and some folks they might make it a SMART goal, and others might make it basically this broad. We're going to increase math and ELA scores, or we're going to ensure high academic outcomes for all students. That's their overarching goal. That's the target, right? And then the metrics are the numbers we're going to count. Like I'm going to count CASP scores. I'm going to count math scores. The actions are the actual activities that you're doing, right? They're the things that you're going to do. Are you going to hire counselors? You're going to hire SEL, you're going to buy some SEL curriculum. You're going to provide professional development. And if I do all of those things, because that's a 2.0, then I might see my kids are going to be more connected to school. I'm going to be looking at chronic absenteeism rates. I'm going to be looking at a reduction of suspensions. And I'm going to be looking at teacher survey data. I'm going to be counting those professional development how many professional development sessions did I have? Were they well attended? They might not put all of those in there, but I recommend that they save all those different metrics so that they can show that maybe it wasn't really effective, but we only got 25 people to come, but of those 25 people that came, 24 of them thought it was really high quality and very useful for their job. So we now know you're not going to see the outcome data yet, and so that's what you want when you're having someone present that information to you. You can say things like, well, I see that the math scores didn't go up, but you did all of these things and you said it was effective. Can you tell me why? That's a great question to ask a lot. And you'll know they'll be able to say, well, you know what? We weren't able to get it at every school. We were only piloting it at 2 schools. And at those 2 schools, we do have the data. I can bring that to you at a later date, something like that. Goals versus actions. So, and a lot of times though, folks would put into the metrics. I think that's coming up pretty soon. I do actually. I'm going to go back. Sorry. The metrics section, I moved that to the back because I wanted to share with you all of the metrics in the resource page. So I'm going to share that at the end. Those are the things that you're counting. Things for you to also think about. So those are things where I was just mentioning, those are great questions to ask when you're probing around with you're like, don't understand something. But one of the things for you to reflect on is our goals improving outcomes for students who need it the most. So one thing I'm always looking for is where are your gaps and how are you going to fill those gaps? And at the same time, you really want all going up at the same time. So you're looking for everything. You want everybody to rise. You don't want to close a gap by closing the gap, by lowering the bar. You want to bring those other kids up at the same time, but you want to also be increasing for all. Do the actions and investments that we have logically aligned to the goals? And are we funding activities with a clear connection? So are we just funding activities? You should be able to answer every action should be tied to a metric. So if you're going to hire TOSAs, what are they doing? How are they explaining? If you're hiring counselors, what is it that you expect to change because you hired counselors? Sometimes that's a harder question for people to answer. They'll say, we know we need it, but how do you know if it's working? That's always a great question. And then what do the metrics in the annual analysis tell us about how it's working? So a lot of times I'll see at the beginning when I read LCAPs probably 6 times before they go to the board. So I'm actually poking it apart a lot beforehand as a county office. I approve the district LCAPs. So before they send it to their board, I've seen it like 6 times. And so I'm asking them like, well, you said it's working, but I don't have any data here. And I'll send them back to go look for it. And then I'll say, you used increased and improved services funds, which is next. How do I know it's working for English learners, foster youth, and low SES kids? So that's the kind of evidence you're looking for too. I'm running lower on time, so I want to get through the 5th part here before I get to the chat. And you're asking good questions, so throw questions that are relative to yourselves in here at any time. I'd rather answer those than a pre-planned chat question. This last section is something that can be really hard and really important, I think, as a board member. This is the increase and improved services for foster youth, English learners, and low-income students. Here, they have the money and the percentages of money that they need to spend. And then they have to describe if these actions are school-wide, or county office wide. So if you're doing this for all, you're not going to do it just for the foster youth because that's allowable too. But if you're doing it for the whole county office, schools, then they need to explain how these kids were considered first in it. So if we say we're going to run an intervention program because that's good for all kids, but it's especially important for these kids because they're extra, there's a larger gap, then they need to basically be able to say, here's why we considered these, and they have first priority into getting into this program. And here's the research that shows why what we're using works. So it's really important. These are some of the key terms you're going to see when you're looking at them. And unduplicated students are English learners, low income, and foster youth. And why they call it unduplicated is because you don't count them more than once. So I can be a low income English learner in a foster program and I'm counted one time. So that's why it's called unduplicated. But I do generate extra funds. And then there's the UPP, which is that percentage of the unduplicated students. And then there's the MPP. I still mess this one up because that's really the budget part. It's the percentage of which they must increase or improve their services for unduplicated students. It's the proportion to factor. But those are the funds that I talked about before. And I already talked about them. I just wanted them there because this is where these are the purple, the supplemental and the concentration funds come in over in this section. And why we call it increased or improved is because there's two ways. You can increase the services. So you can say, we are running an intervention program for all of our students and an after-school program just for English learners that's going to be language-based. So you can be adding an extra service. You can be saying we're going to be running an extra counseling session for newcomers, things like that. Or we're hiring one extra counselor that's just to work on English learner placement, something like that. Or you can improve the quality, which is what I was talking about. You can maybe make a more robust intervention program for all students and grow that quality. Or we're going to add co-teachers into these classes, these math support classes. We're going to co-teach. We're going to actually we're not improving and adding extra class, but we are increasing the quantity of teachers, but we're also increasing the quality of the program. And this is what I was mentioning before. There's 3 types of contributing actions, the ones that you want that are upgrading everyone. And then there's one that's just a school-wide, and then the limited. The limited is when it's just for, I'm going to hire a foster youth liaison and they're only going to be working with foster youth. That's limited. It doesn't have to be anyone else gets that use of that because these are the kids that are adding these additional funds. So you can just add extra ELD sections. So things like that. But it really does need to go in there and they need to be able to explain and justify that and then describe what it is and how those are meeting that program. And then also for the additional concentration, how is it being used to increase the number of staff who provide direct services? It doesn't go back up to the top. It's the direct services piece. This is how one district did this. I wanted to provide another example. So they have their district-wide support right there. They have their regular things down there at the bottom of the period. They have social emotional curriculum for all, right? And then they have some targeted support. So summer school, can they offer it to other folks? Yes, but they're using their supplemental funds to pay for some summer school. And are they letting the students with not students with the socioeconomic in first and the EL and the foster youth, they get first services, and they might actually additionally provide transportation for those students to get to summer school. So it's targeted. And then there's some intensive supports that they might be adding specifically just for others. So that's really just an example of how you might use your supplemental funds differently. And a way to look at your reflection is, are we demonstrating that clearly? It's sometimes hard to say that we're increasing or improving services for all students, and then it really is principle for this. So really looking at that, and are we demonstrating that? How are we doing it specifically for these groups of students? And then what is the evidence for that? Let's see. It's hard to, I'm reading the chat. It's hard to show growth and improvement for our students in our juvenile hall schools. And we've asked for data now to be in 30, 60, 90-day metrics versus just using the dashboard annual data. That is definitely a lot of our DAS schools, dashboard alternative schools, which are your community schools. We're looking at alternative metrics. That is also typically explaining your narratives. And it's also, I love that you guys are asking for the 30-day, the 90 days. That's wonderful. And now you're going to see the reading group for students who have been there for 60 days. Yes. So you can be looking at that as well. I'd also ask the question, how many of our kids have been at our community school for the entire year? And ask those kinds of questions, because that's going to be what's showing up on your dashboard too. Action tables. That's the math part at the end. So I wanted to make sure you knew, what did we plan? What was the contributing actions that, yes, it's increase and improve services. And then what is the tables there and the carryover money. So those are all right there, as long as the instructions for you to dive deeper into the money piece. But typically you'll get a nice overview from those presenting to you for those action tables. In June, this is with the statutory. This is board meeting number 1 and board meeting number 2. These are the two parts. There's other things in the timeline that I usually would give my writers, but for you both, this group, you're really looking at board meeting number 1 is your public hearing. It needs to be posted. You know these rules better than I do probably on this part. And then here's what goes into it. And then it is the public hearing for the LCAP must occur at the same meeting as the public hearing for the district budget, which is in there. And then the adoption piece, that's different, and it must occur after and separate from the LCAP public hearing meeting. So everything goes in that order. It goes in the order of we call it the BOP, the budget overview for parents, then your LCAP, and then your action tables and instructions. That's how it goes. It goes in that order for everybody. So some of the key takeaways from this are, I hope that you understand that LCAP is not just compliance. I know that you can see it as a compliance document, but really compliance is that you have to write it down. And the work is the work of the district, and it is the district story. It's a strategic roadmap. It is your equity commitment. So we do see sometimes boards don't want to see, where do the SED, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, what we don't care about where they are, we only care about where all are. But really, when you tease that out, and that is an equity commitment, and the whole document is, this is what we're doing for students. We're serving our students, and we're giving these things, and it's out there and it's public for everyone. It's a transparency document. So with that, what is one question you might ask next time you review? I meant to say you, as a board member, review the document, the LCAP. What might you ask next time? Or your board? No, that makes sense. Just wasn't what I was saying. And then I'm going to share a list of resources for you. Ooh, I'm a little over.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to actually just switch to that. On this resource page, I wanted you to think about, here's the overview, easy click. Same with LCFF, frequently asked questions. A link directly to the school dashboard. If you're not aware of that, that's where a lot of the metrics and all of the talking about on the reflections comes from. I put together this little document right here as a way, as you listen to an LCAP presentation, what are some of the questions you might want to answer? This is not a list where you just start firing at people questions after questions, but maybe select 1 or 2 that you're thinking about. Thanks for putting a couple things in there. I love these questions. I'm going to get through these. These are the state priorities, and we talk about the state priorities. That's right here of where they are. And then last, this is the metrics. So when we're thinking about the metrics, these are required by law. What is it that needs to go into your LCAP? So local data does not. Those are examples, but here's the actual requirement right here. And then another link back to those acronyms, because it's nice to have that in front of you when you're at a board meeting. That question, was there anyone missing in these conversations? Is there somebody, a lot of times when I'm I am working with a district. They're like, we can't get the people that need to be there. We couldn't get English learner parents to our pack. We tried and we tried and we tried. So maybe that's a question that would be really good. And are our students improving is the number one. And you can be looking at that from your lens of chronic absenteeism, grad rate, suspensions decreasing, things like that. Why are we not seeing progress? Yes, that's a great question too. So with that, hopefully I got done in just enough time. Thank you for having us, Placer County. We love being able to talk. I love being able to talk about the LCAP in a way that I hope you find it meaningful as I do when I'm listening to all the folks out there writing them. So
This is Bina. This was an excellent presentation. I thought you really hit on a lot of important points. You helped us think about questions we should ask. Very clear, comprehensive. So thank you. I am just curious if just we could take 2 or 3 minutes before we go to what else we're offering at ACCBE. Did any of you still have a question or a comment about your LCAP or that you wanted to ask before we start closing out? I think we have a few minutes. Okay. Well, I will assume everyone's questions they came with got answered. And Debbie, why don't you take us
Great.
on? Oh, go on.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say thank you to Leslie and Jennifer. Great material, and to let all the attendees know we will be getting this posted on the website, and I know that'll be really important because of all the links that Leslie has in her presentation. And as we wrap out, just for those of you that didn't have a chance to join us in Modesto a couple weeks ago, we had a phenomenal session, our first of 3 Knowledge to Action conferences. And want to remind you that registration is still open. We're going to be in Riverside, April 10, 11. That's a Friday night, Saturday. And then in Ukiah, it's a Saturday, Sunday combination, May 16 and 17. So this PowerPoint presentation will also be posted. So these links will be live. Also, if you go to our homepage, there is a pop-up box that you have to click past, and that pop-up box has these flyers and the registration links in it. So we do charge a small registration fee simply to cover food and other minor costs that we have in putting a conference on. So encourage you to join us because it is the participation that makes the discussion and the networking so rich. Also, we have a couple more special topics and our next installment in Building Trustee Excellence coming up. So April 23rd, we're having a session on literacy in action. So we've got both a representative of the Sacramento Literacy Foundation as well as Sac County Office of Education staff. And then we're doing a really exciting session with Breaking Barriers and the California Welfare Directors Association on what is our county board role in building whole child support. So as much as it's about education, it's also about what are those supports the whole child needs and where are those resources. And then Misty Key in Ventura County, one of our newer member counties, is going to be doing a session on COE budgets. So hope you will join us for those. Those are all listed on our website. So with that, again, we thank all of our members for supporting ACCBE, and we're here to help, as we say in our mission, be the voice for building excellence for county board trustees. So, Bina, Yvonne, David, anything before we sign out?
Yvonne, I just, put in a plug that this 45 county boards have joined. We represent 90% of California students. And for those, just a few have not joined, and if you know anyone, your next door neighbor, bring them in. And we come together with 58 county boards. Wow. Can you imagine our voice? So I hope that, certainly 3 or 4 will be coming in a couple of months and round it up at 50, hopefully. Thank you.
And Greg, thank you for your comments. So glad to know that this was very timely and pertinent programming for you. So again, if you or your colleagues on your county board need it as well, it'll be posted here in a couple of days, and you'll be sure to get the note. All right. With that, thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Hey, take care.
Yeah.
Bye.